Evening vinyl community. Hi, I hope everybody's doing really well. It's Rob back for a quick a quick video response um, to Alan at Static Traveller, who a couple of days ago uploaded a video showing your TV related vinyl, obviously vinyl records, anything associated with television programs, uh, children's, adult viewing, whatever, or otherwise, or whatever. So I was immediately intrigued by what he showed because he always shows interesting records, but he showed particularly some kids records and children's stuff that from programs that were very nostalgic from the 70s, that obviously we all, or I'm sure a lot of us in the UK, remember really, really well, and have very fond memories of, and particularly when you were off sick as a kid, and you'd be, sometimes off for a few days, you'd be sat in front of the TV watching daytime telly, watch with mother, etc., etc. So very interesting thread, and got me thinking. When I went through my collection, I seem to recall I actually had a lot more than what I actually pulled out. So sort of a couple of them are fairly loosely connected, let's say. So none more so than the first one I'm going to show. There are a few in here, or a couple at least, I think that I have shown before. So apologies for that, but so I could sort of stretch the video at least a little bit further than I would have done otherwise. So okay, so the first one, I think I did show this a while back, but this is an album that was actually probably the first album I ever owned when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, something like that. It's not directly associated with a television program, but the title is a kind of play on the television program that the person who the record relates to was associated with. So, okay, so this is Wendy Craig, and this is an album called In Front of the Children, which was released on Music for Pleasure from 1970. So going back a bit, the connection with the television program is basically that Wendy Craig, for those outside of the UK, probably won't be very familiar with Wendy Craig, but she's as a drama and comedy actress from the late 60s. And she actually started off in a sort of kitchen sink kind of drama, sort of comedy called Not in Front of the Children, which was highly successful. And because of the success of that, they actually asked her if she'd like to do a children's record. Obviously, I guess because it's a record predominantly for children in a storytelling mode, hence the title In Front of the Children. But the stipulations that she put on was that the children would do all the musical sounds and effects and so on. I think they're actually part of a tutorial school from London, school for young musicians. I don't know whether the children on the front cover, whether they're from an agency or whatever, but are connected with that. But possibly, I don't know. And anyway, so the other stipulation was that she would actually choose the stories herself. So anyway, she that's what she did. And though this is basically her narrating these stories, but they're really interesting because they're all from all over the world. There's one here called a Wongalema, which was a story from Zambia, or it used to. I don't think it's called Zambia anymore, is it? The Bamboo Cutter and the Maid was a story from Japan. Prince Christian and the Pirates, English story. The Day the Water Disappeared. That's a story about a bullfrog that that drinks all the water up, and everybody goes thirsty basically. So they have to make him laugh so that all the water comes out, and the drought is relieved. Old Lady and the Tramp, which is a story from Sweden. And The Jester Who Fooled the King. But she reads them so well, and just obviously because she picked the stories herself. So she researched them herself. Maybe there were favourites that she had from when she was younger, and that were perhaps adapted. But yeah, either way, they're very engaging, and the way that she reads them is very engaging, and it certainly held my attention when I was very much younger. And the more than a couple of these stories are actually quite unnerving. They're sort of unsettling and intriguing in kind of equal measure. I just listened to this album a lot when I was a kid, even though I knew the stories and I knew what was coming up. Just escapism, just wonderful. And I mean, hardly recommend. Obviously they're kids' stories, but it's still, they're well done. I think you could still get enjoyment out of listening to them as an adult. So, I think being on a cheap budget label like MFP. This isn't the actual copy I had from when I was younger, sadly, but this was a copy I picked up later. I think I paid about 50p or £1 for it. You can find it pretty much anywhere, very, very cheap. So, but that's Wendy Craig and In Front of the Children. Okay, next one. This is a soundtrack from a television. I think it was a television special that was from 1968 with Diana Ross and the Supremes and the Temptations. This is on Tamla Motown. This is TCB, or Taking Care of Business. So this is Mary Wilson, Diana Ross, Supremes with the Temptations. Supremes come on first, and then they, for those not familiar with this, and then they kind of introduce the Temptations. So, I picked this up from a record fair a couple of years ago, and I think it was about £1, £1.50, something like that. So apparently it was a huge seller in the back end of the 60s. It's a really big seller, and it's more than a little bit cringy with sort of Diana Ross sort of having banter and some of the stuff that she's kind of coming out with, but the music is fabulous. Okay. To the 80s now, and this was the television soundtrack album to Legend by Clannad. So this was the Robin of Sherwood stories from I think it's 1984. I think this was. So I think this was quite a successful album for Clannad, and kind of pushed their career, I think, because of it. Obviously the title track Robin the Hooded Man was a chart hit, nice sort of Celtic sort of flavoured sort of soft rock, I guess, nice record. Okay, next one's definitely in the cult sort of children's television sort of field. Big favourite of mine. Been a fan of of Jerry Anderson's work for pretty much most of my life. This is the soundtrack album to Thunderbirds. This is the entire score by Barry Gray, and this was an album that was released last year. It's gatefold. Lovely artwork there, pictures from the various programs from the series. Lovely cover there as well. Yeah, and this is great. So we've got on this lovely blue vinyl. Not usually into coloured vinyl, but it seemed very appropriate with this kind of record. So, but yeah, I mean, what can you say about Thunderbirds? It's a cult English institution, isn't it? I mean, every kid of certainly my age group, and perhaps a bit older as well, remembers this. I don't remember it obviously from the mid 60s when it first came out because I wasn't born, but certainly these were played in the shows were played in regular rotation into the throughout the 70s, and growing up, remember these, particularly on I think a Sunday afternoon. I seem to remember they used to play this before, I think it was Star Soccer. They always showed Thunderbirds. So yeah, and it just loved it. Just fantastic. And the music, this is great. I mean, obviously you got Barry Gray. Did quite a lot of the music for Jerry Anderson Productions. Jerry Anderson obviously always just surrounded himself, fantastic people in production, and the music was no exception. Yeah, I mean, this just has everything. It's not just the big band theme, which is obviously repeated in various forms throughout the this record, but you've got kind of exotica, kind of Sandy. Martin Denny kind of feel, this sort of jazz lounge music, a bit of kind of 60s touches of 60s pop. I mean, it's just all sorts, to give you a real feel of the sort of contemporary feel of the time, musically. So wonderful stuff. Yeah. Okay. And then obviously the Herald in the 1980s, and got Not an 9 o'clock news. Fantastic UK comedy series, sort of natural kind of successors to sort of Monty Python and so on. Launched the careers of Griff Rhys-Jones, Mel Smith, and the brilliant Rowan Atkinson. And this was the first one. I think the second one was called Hedgehog Sandwich, which I haven't got, but I have seen it. I've just never picked it up. But yeah, just hilariously funny, just funny newsreel skits, sort of songs like the Confrontation song about nuclear war, and just really, really funny. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, sticking with the comedy, another favourite of mine. Love the books as well. This is the soundtrack to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, with the letters "Don't Panic" in friendly writing on the cover. Fabulous stuff. Yeah. So. I think this pretty much sort of covers the original book. Obviously, originally it was before it was made into a television show. It was a radio broadcast. And just I mean, I'm sure a lot of you out there know this story, Douglas Adams and so on. Just brilliant. Brilliant stuff, and that sort of cod philosophy and so on, and the sort of mix with outrageous kind of space fantasy and physics, and yeah, it's just ludicrous, but quite poignant as well in some places as well. Just very, very entertaining, and yeah, obviously not so much music, although that I think the theme was Journey to the Sorcerer, which was Bernie Leadon from the Eagles. Originally wrote that. So, but yeah, that's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Okay, and just a couple more. So we've got television special from the 1967, I think. This is Moving with Nancy, so Nancy Sinatra. Yeah, this this is great. This is obviously just the soundtrack from the music that was on that. So you got Lee Hazelwood and Nancy Sinatra, of course. And probably my favourite two on this are Things with Dean Martin and the sublime Some Velvet Morning. Lee Hazelwood song, just absolutely just amazing. And then obviously on side two, you've got Two Little Children. Great version of Up, Up and Away. Obviously that was done by the Fifth Dimension. And sort of various other sort of pop hits from the time. But yeah, that's a nice one. Okay, and ending with an absolute TV favourite of mine, comedy-wise, that I always end up going back to. This is Steptoe and Son. So this is, I think I showed this on my very first video. Seems to have gone full circle here. So, but I went out. This was a pickup from one of my day trips out with my wife and my son, and one weekend, and I forget where we were going now. Somewhere in, I think it was Evesham Way, somewhere like that. And it was just an antique emporium in the middle of nowhere, just on the side of the road. And I stopped off, much to the chagrin of my son, because he always thinks I'm going looking for vinyl, and he absolutely hates it. So he knows I'm going to always go in, and it's going to be a long haul. Yeah, I went in the shop, and there was a lot of stuff that was genuine antiques that I would never, A, didn't particularly want, B, I would never have been able to afford in a million years. Yeah, they had a selection of records, and this was amongst them. So yeah, I believe this must have been from 1962, because it's written there in biro, and somebody's even been kind enough to put the time on there and put 58 minutes. So yeah, I think this was some of their really early ones from the first series. You got The Bird, I think, which was in the first series, yeah, it's adapted from the TV series. So I think they re-recorded them, but still hilariously funny and very poignant as well. Love-hate relationship between the two of them. Genuinely on screen and off screen, which was always made their performance all the more intriguing and entertaining. So yeah, so thanks to Alan for putting that one together. Yeah, and I'll hopefully be back soon with another video, guys. Cheers, all the best, take care, bye bye.